Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first podcast for 2024. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, Christmas season with your loved ones, and had a wonderful new year. And today we have a wonderful guest joining us. And it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, I have to say. Marie is a visionary leader for the Aquarian Networks Corporation. She's also the director of growth for Jiffy and a platform initiative for conscious business. So I usually on this podcast, I like to talk about spirituality and, just normal day-to-day things that we do in our life that can help us to become more aware and more conscious. And I had had a conversation with Marie. I've met Marie, I think it was maybe last year, the year before, through a friend of mine, and enjoy her so much. And every time when we meet and we get together, we just, the conversation is so amazing. But we met maybe a week or so before I invited her to this podcast, and the conversation just happened to be around business. And when I was just listening to her, as I do when I'm with people, I always try to be open and what can I receive and what can I contribute. That's how I kind of go into a conversation. And I was just blown away by how she was talking about business and just the kind of business investments and stuff that she's been looking at. Because, I don't know if you see the caption on this, our podcast is like business done differently for the mature woman. It's like, so when you've done things, for a while and you're just trying to do things smarter, I guess, less effort for more reward is what I was getting from that particular thing. And she was still, Marie was still joking around it, for the mature woman. And I actually did caption that in the podcast name. And so today's podcast is all about business done differently. And in particular, for the woman who is more mature. So welcome, Marie. It's so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's a little bit cold here in the Okanagan today. We had our first snowfall. So warm welcome to you. And I would like for you, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners, perhaps where you come from, how you were raised, where you were raised, and then how you got to be on this path of business. Because traditionally, when I was growing up, so many years ago, traditionally, there were mostly men in business, right? There was always like men in business. And so it's just over the last, I would say 50 years, maybe or so, that we've seen more women come into it. And even now, I think we're holding our space pretty well to be a woman in business. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what was your journey and how you got, because when I met Marie, like she's so confident about her business and what she does. And I've just been blown away. So I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your journey towards that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So I was born and grew up in a very small town in northern Saskatchewan. So very humble beginnings of parents. So my father was born in Austria. My mom was first generation. She was born in Ontario, but background very European, and lots of Europeans were coming to Canada in the 1930s. As what happened with my father. So they set up in this little small town area and carved a life out. So that's where I grew up, and I really understand and know the importance of community, of family, of taking risks and working hard, and how important education is. So that was something that was always extremely important for both my mom and dad. They did not have the privilege of getting much more than their grade 8 education. And it was really brought home very strongly to us that education is the way forward. So everyone in the family has gone on to post-secondary university degrees. I have a master's. One of my sisters has a PhD, and others have just have their degrees and studies, but everyone has done something. And so there was just a phone call I had to get rid of there.
So, yeah, exactly. I think everybody knows technology. I switched mine off. My phone's like, oh. Yeah, because I'm the same when it comes like, oh my God, like if I'm on a live or something like that, right?
It's all part of the journey.
Exactly. We're having, this is what I love about the podcast that I created. Don't know about other people, but to me, has to be authentic, relaxed. What can we share that if, somebody listens to it, it can add value to them? We've done our job. Yeah.
Absolutely. So where I went from the small town, of course, was to the university, and my first degree was in education, and my master's was also as a master's of educational administration. And I was very drawn to leadership. So I experienced a family that was a family of leaders in our community, and being a leader kind of came quite natural and a real draw for that. And along with that came a very deep desire to understand who am I, why am I here, what is life all about, how can I contribute and make a difference. So spirituality has always been a part of my life, and it certainly is a very strong part of business. So as my education career went forward, I was in the teaching world for 33 years. And, I moved to California and taught in Los Angeles for a couple of years. I moved back to Alberta where I made my home base. And so I had lots of adventures like that. We talk about challenges in life. So I married first time when I was in my 20, which was, as we do our studies, it was all for me. I look back, it was really about security, about finding some security. And it was a wrong reason.
Yeah. I mean, like 99.9% of us really do that, don't we? We all get to the partner for something that we think we need from them.
Yeah, it's a big life lesson though, whether you're in business or not. So why am I doing what I'm doing, and to really self-examine. So that whole idea of security. So then, I'd moved to California, I came back, worked on my master's, and I met the love of my life. So I married a very lovely man, and I had to rearrange my mind about, my dream about going back and staying in California. So Edmonton became my home, and it was lovely, and a beautiful relationship with a man who was absolutely everything I could want, and just a gentle human being and he came from a family that was in business, and they knew about business. So I learned a lot about business for him. And together we actually started our business of Aquarian Networks Corporation in 1991. And he was in the building industry, but he was also an artist. So we had an idea that he would create artwork and I would write little booklets to go with it. So we built a company that really did artwork, and some of it landed. There's about peace candles and earth lights and all kinds of things about consciousness. Our whole dream, or the reason for the company was, the vehicle might be the art, but it's about growing our people to their full potential. So we really wanted to look at the self and the planet, and how do we put a message out there to support, whether it's just our employees or whomever that we're working for, to really grow themselves to their full potential. So in the late 90s, the artwork was great, and it was fun, it's beautiful, but it just wasn't making any money. And at that time I was pregnant with my son, and still teaching and kind of paying all the bills. But we moved back into construction. So we really always had that. And that became the next real art, was renovation. So Doug was an incredible artist and designer, and he knew all about building. He had come from a childhood of builders. And we moved our company into a construction renovation company, and we called it Aquarian Renovations. So the work became working with clients, working with our staff to really grow them to their full potential, to deliver high quality, beautiful products that our clients loved. So we did that and so the company was built. And in 2011, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So he was 50 years old, and he lasted 1 year. But in the process of that year, we really had time to get to talk about, what goes forward. So the option of actually closing the business down, who's going to run it, looked around the company, and just really thought about where could I best apply my life energy to. And at that time, I was a vice principal of a very vibrant school. And, I had my eye on principalship. However, in a school district or in an organization like that, it's easy to be replaced. And I knew that. Not having someone, not replacing someone with it's not so easy in a company that you own because your heart's in
You're
it.
the owner.
You get the skin in the game, all those things. So I actually
Yeah.
left the school district, and after he died, I mean, really it was that transition. I took over the business and stepped in, not knowing, like knowing things, but not really knowing the full extent. I was a grieving wife. Our son had just turned 14.
Yeah.
The team had lost their beloved leader, and I needed to find my way and lead this group forward.
It was a little bit tough. And I never heard this part of your story, but now just listening to you, it makes total sense, because when I was talking to Marie, I had really this sense of this lady, this woman who really knows what she's talking about, not just from words, but from experience. And so often, we kind of don't realize that it took all that to happen to you and all those experiences that you had to go through to create this person that you are now. So even in those, and that's why when we talk anything on this podcast, doesn't matter what the topic is, we always come back to that spirituality. So it's like, when you had to go deep within yourself and you had to find the strength, even through losing your husband and having, to raise your son at such a pivotal age, being a teenage boy and just having lost his father. These are all things that they are not easy things. They're hard things. But when you take those hard things and you just do what you can do and you move forward, you learn and you grow and you transform. And actually, that's what I always see in you without even having heard your story. And it makes total sense to me now that you are who you are now, because those experiences shaped you. And also, but sometimes what we can do in our life is we can become afraid of these things when they happen to us. Like, oh my God, how am I going to cope? And we want to give up, or we want to stay in the victim mode. And then we have an example, like when I see you as somebody who took it on and just moved with it and became successful. Now, success can be measured in many different ways, but to me, success means, like, when I look at you, when I talk to you, you are very positive, and everything that that your life has given you the opportunities to become who you are now. And so that's so wonderful. So now it's like, yep, I can see why I really, really connect with her so much. And on the topic of being in business, and whenever I talk to Marie, every now and then when we get together usually with a group of other ladies too, she always has a very, she always like looks at, hey, you can connect with this one to do that. And she's just wired like that. And I think that's so great, because obviously I don't have that, because this is not how I'm wired. But it's so wonderful to have people like you in the world that can guide women, because even you don't know how good you are and what your gifts can do to the world. Then Marie be like, but have you considered about doing that? Like, you can talk to that man about that. And anyhow, that was just my little segue to put that in here, so that listeners can have a little more in-depth understanding also of what sometimes when we go through tough stuff, if you just go through it and just put one foot in front of the other, because I'm sure you didn't know at that time that you would be as happy as you are now, right?
Right. It's true. And as a teacher and as someone who knows about life too, everybody deserves the opportunity to fail. Because if we don't try, we don't fail.
Can you say that again? Oh my God. Everybody deserves
the opportunity to fail. So in order to fail, you have to try. And if you don't try, you can't fail. So it is the secret to success, to give it a shot, to give it your best shot. And that's what I committed to. And when Doug first got sick, we had read all kinds of books, the Wayne Dyers, we follow all the stuff, the spirituality. Like we were really on completely the same page. He said, all those books that we've read, all those seminars that we've gone to, all those retreats, all the you know, the yoga and all that stuff. It's like now the rubber hits the road. We have to put it into practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have to walk what we know. And the one thing that we can do is to be a good role model for others.
Wow. That really hits very, very deep. Because it's so true. We can spend an awful amount of time and money on going to school and learning about these things, buying the books, going to the seminars, going to the retreats, buying the books. But you're only going to really experience it when you become those things that you're reading about. And that's what your husband was talking about, put the rubber to the road.
We have to walk.
You have to walk. And you will also find, I mean, from my little experience that I've had in my life, you'll find that when you go towards those things that you think is hard, that you think you cannot do, it's somehow you'll always find that there's more of you. You go deeper into the depths because we are infinite beings. And, you know, our mind, our body, emotions, feelings, and thoughts make us feel very limited because because the body is so fragile. Everything is so fragile. One moment you're happy, you have everything. The next moment you have nothing. And so everything is so fragile that we often if you think you are just a body, feelings, and emotions, then you don't connect with the infinite self, then when these things finish as they will, ultimately there's only change in this whole universe. So we're all going to be transformed over and over and over again. But if you get attached to thinking that I'm just a body, or my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, then of course you can have a meltdown thinking like you're going to lose things, right? But if you tap into that, you are the infinite being. And I think perhaps like it's so wonderful because as you're mentioning your husband, I'm like a little bit tapping into him there. And it's almost like, you know, when you start to read all these things like Dr. Wayne Dyer and all this stuff, it's really that they are tools for us. But what we do with the tools is the difference.
Oh, yeah,
How
absolutely.
we use the tools make the difference in our life. You can just read, and I know when I was growing up, when I was young, I actually read the Bible. And because I loved reading the scriptures. And Paul in Corinthians, I think it's the second book of Corinthians, where Paul talks about, you know, you can hear about love, or you can talk about love, but until you become love, you don't know. Until you become love, you don't know. So all the tools, all these things we keep talking about, until you become that, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the Gandhi's phrase of be the change you wish to see in the world is it is a mantra of mine too. So what is it that I'm looking to experience? Like I need to be that. So if I'm looking for understanding, I need to be understanding. If I need to be, you know, if I want to be seen, I need to see others. If I want to be heard, I need to listen. So all those things and St. Francis has a beautiful peace prayer that I would read and in my head every day when I'd go out running in the morning to pray that one, you know, grant me the
wisdom.
Be wisdom. Yeah, all of that. I can't recite it off the top of my head right now.
I know.
To really like to have that spiritual background, then all of a sudden anything is possible. Like, so what would I like to create today? It's like, okay, what?
So let's talk a little bit about that, because that's probably one of the things I love about you a lot is there's just like, there's no like, I don't think I can do it. You're just like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then you just do that. So what kind of advice can you offer to us and our listeners here about if they feeling like stuck, or they feel like, oh, I can't do it, I can't create anything? I mean, look at Marie as a perfect example. Like, she didn't know that much about the business that her husband left, and she was willing to learn about it and actually became very successful. So what kind of, you know, what can you tell us to inspire us if there's anybody listening and thinking like, I want to do something, but I feel like, oh, I'm a woman, or I can't, or.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is to think about what is it that I'm so afraid of? What is it here? Exactly. Am I afraid of being looked at as being foolish, or immature or don't know what I'm doing or what other people's judgments might be? Or am I fearful that I don't know what I'm doing and therefore I shouldn't?
Yeah.
Facing our fears and doing it anyway is the way through. So it's like, yeah,
Yes.
public speaking can be scary, but once you do start public speaking or get out there, all of a sudden it's like, hey, that's not so bad. I didn't die. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and also I think really tapping into your strengths. So one of the things that I did when I really sat in the CEO's chair for the first week, I started thinking about, okay, what am I good at? And one thing that I knew I was good at, I'm a good writer. So as a language arts teacher and someone who's, been in the education world, I'm good at writing. And I thought, I need to learn about my business. So what I started doing was I actually started interviewing past clients about the projects that we worked on. And I wrote articles about them, and we always had beautiful pictures. We entered all of many of our projects into contests with the Canadian home builders, both Edmonton Region, Alberta, and Canada. And I started writing articles about projects from the beginning, from what their experience was to how did our team work with them, what were their challenges, what were the things that we could have done better, what did we do right, how did they feel at the end, and I got them published. So they were published in a magazine called Home Decor and Renovation magazine, and it was a local magazine that was delivered freely to supermarkets and other places where people can pick up those free magazines. And I developed a real following. Like, it was a $30,000 readership. And I wrote articles about our business, about specific projects for about 8 or 9 years. And they were out every 2 months. So people, they were like, I had a fan base.
Yeah.
It was so cool. So it was one way to learn about how we're perceived in the market and what we're doing well, and letting my team know what was really appreciated and where they might improve. It also way of honoring our clients so that they could feel they had some bragging rights, like they just didn't get a great renovation. They actually had an article written about them. They could show all their friends, and they're contribute to the article in whatever way, quote them. And it also brought recognition to the business. So, for example, one time, so I drive still a truck.
She's still a truck lady, even though, the building
Alberta.
business is not, yeah.
And I used to have the logos on the side and all that, because now, I sold the construction portion of the company a couple of years ago. And one time I remember driving home from a business meeting. It was probably at the Canadian Home Builders. And I was driving down the street and got to a red light. And this truck pulled up beside me, and this guy jumped out of his truck and he goes, "Are you the lady from the magazine? Are you the one?" I said, can I come and work for you?
Amazing.
I had to give him my business card and said, give us a call at the office. But his work was installing hardwood. So we always subcontracted that. So it wasn't a job that I could give him, but just that whole the energy, I just laughed. And when I got back to the office, I told the guys there, I feel like, paparazzi was following or something. It was just so fun. It's just so fun. There's so much joy in giving, really being an expression of what's possible. So that I really brought that to not only my business, but I also got very involved at the association level. So with the Canadian Home Builders, and I got on committees, and I said, who are the people that I need to get to know in this industry, and how can I help? So as a leader, how can I get on committees or get on boards of directors? And I did that. And in doing that, I think I broke a few norms about what women can do, especially women entering an industry that
male predominant.
No, it's
predominantly male.
And I didn't, it wasn't my past. I was an educator. But what I brought really made a difference. And truth be known, I wanted to get on the board of directors with the Canadian Home Builders just to give it a shot. And it took me 3 times to get up 3 years to give a speech and talk about who I am and what I wanted. And in the third year, I got voted onto the board. And in 3 more years, 3 or 4, so I was chairing the board. Now, when I first got on that board of directors, I was the only woman on the board. It was like, it was all
men. Yeah.
And by the time I took chair role, we were half and half.
Wow. So
really
you
tough.
really you really created that path
Yeah,
for
to tap
females. Yeah.
women on the shoulder and say, hey, put your name forward. Let's
Yes.
get women on the board. If we're going to create the change that we really want to see in the world, we need to balance, and we need to do it
Yes.
here. So
Yes.
that was
Wow.
pretty exciting. Mhm.
Yeah. So you see, those are the things that I'm really, it's very admirable. You know, not just did you step up to take over the business when your husband passed away, but you also decided to make it better. Whatever industry you were in, you also looked at how can I contribute? And also, obviously, they contributed to you as well. And I think you said early on about, you know, when I asked the question about what can you tell people like us who wants to start a business, who is thinking like, oh, I can't, because I think for me personally, it would always have been the biggest hurdle would be like, really, we are afraid of failure because we always think like, if I try something, it has to work out well. And then when I just like, I guess with my little business that I've been running for the last 25 years in yoga and health and wellness, I decided that, okay, even if I just help one person, then it's not a failure. Even if I just help 2 people, then it's not a failure. And what you also said early on is about identify what it is that you're good at. So then, you know, taking what you're good at and just keep working on that instead of putting all these goals ahead of really what is working. Because sometimes we put these goals and we're just trying to reach these goals and we're so unhappy because we haven't reached those goals. And but if we just actually decided to be where we are and to do what we're good at, if we start there, and then we can see what can unfold. So even in my own little business here over the last 25 years, like I couldn't have imagined. And just like you in your industry, like I've made leaps and bounds in my industry. Like I've had such great opportunities to teach yoga worldwide, to run workshops worldwide, and to do retreats worldwide. And it's like, I couldn't have even imagined that. But I just started with what I love and what I'm good at. And yeah, it isn't always successful as in how the world looks at success, because the world sometimes tells you that, oh, to be successful, you have to make so much money. And for me, it's more about how much joy it brings me, you know, and that I get to be of service. And then whenever I'm in service, people are always contributing to me. So it's always this giving and receiving. So if we find, like what you said, just doing something that we love and starting with what we're good at, then don't worry about the end result and then see where it takes us.
Yeah. Humanity is our business. Humanity is our business.
Wow. Can you expand a little bit?
Sure. So as an English teacher,
Yeah.
I studied and taught Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol for many, many years. And that it really is one of the most inspiring books. And lots of people think it's about Christmas and it's about, you know, miser and all that kind of stuff. But it is much more than that. It's a book about business. It's a book about what happens when we lose sight of why we're in business. So whether we're a money exchanger or a banker or a garbage man or a business owner, if we're just in business for making money, we're missing the point. We're missing the point. We're in business to grow ourselves to our full potential and to help others to realize and create a space to show up and to be freer and to let go of their fears and worries and doubts and live a better life. You know, I know that. I know that that's why we're here. It is what makes successful business successful. So even now with the construction company that I've sold, most of the people who were working with me are still there. and they're growing themselves even further. So it was all about growing people to their full potential. That includes me, the business owner, and includes you, my staff, and your family, and the people that we serve. Like, we're part of that whole process. And the Christmas Carol really brings that one home in so many ways. So transformation happens when we take a look at the past, the present, and the future. So if we don't take a look at the past and recognize it for being past, if we have a really hard time being in the present, our future is going to look like our past. So that whole transformation of understanding how our minds work and how our projections, if we project the past into the present, the future will look the same. So if we don't like where we've been, we need to start thinking differently. So change your thinking, change your life, and it's a lifelong journey. So as we grow, how do we inspire others to do that? Mankind, so Dickens said, mankind is our business. That was what the ghost from Christmas, actually the Jacob Marley ghost with the chains and all the locks, he was the one who told Scrooge, mankind is our business, and he shakes these things that he went to the grave with, things undone. And when we get that transformation, Scrooge is a different man at the end of the story, and at the end of the film. He's joyful, and he's a philanthropist, and he's helping the weak and the sick, and he's helping himself, and he's helping his employee. So who would you rather do business with? The first snapshot of the Scrooge or the second one? Do you think he was even more prosperous after, when the public realized, wow, this man's changed. He's kind, and he's giving, his health improved, and and he lived a long time to save the life of the little tiny Tim and all of that. So in my mind, that is one of the best business books anybody could ever want to read, because it teaches us what is our responsibility. Are we a miser to our kindness, our ability to have compassion for others? Are we miserly about giving a compliment? Are we miserly even to ourselves in trusting that I can do better than what I've done before, and I'm willing to try? So lots of good life lessons there.
Wow, Marie, that is so awesome. Like, you just blew my little mind away a little bit there. Because traditionally, I mean, myself included, most of us think about business, and it's all very mechanical, and can be stressful, and it can be failures, and sometimes it can also be, obviously you're doing well, but you don't really hear that much about it, because people mostly complaining about when it doesn't go well, and people saying, oh, I've lost all my money, I've lost my this. It's like, usually when people talk about business out there, it's a little bit more negative. It's like, it's hard, and it's not easy, and yet when I listen to you and the lightness with which you've described just your own little business, your life in business, it sounds like you've used it as something to learn from, to grow from, to contribute from. And wow, that is it's so different from what we usually hear. So I'm so very grateful that you came to be with us here today, so that if there's anybody out there that's thinking about starting their own little business, but maybe feeling afraid of failure, or afraid of thinking like it should look like in a certain way, and have the freedom to know that it can be anything. Mm-hmm. It can be anything. We don't need to put a lid on it. We don't need to put it like it has to look like somebody else's business, but if you include what Marie said there, like, if you're not miserly with what you give, if you're not miserly with how you approach things, and if you're more open and more giving, more will always come to you. And even if you start one business, and let's say it fails, although there isn't really failure, there's only learning about things. So the more you fail, the more you learn, the better, the more successful you can be. Like, you ask any very successful business person on the planet, they'll tell you that they failed more times than they can count. And even like like I said earlier too, when I was talking to Marie and I invited her on this podcast, is because it was like it's like a breath of fresh air. When she was talking about business, it was all so, it was just beautiful, actually. And I was like, I was intrigued. I wanted to know more. And now, having interviewed you now, and I was like, oh my God, I see where you come from. And it's so beautiful, because because my line of work has always been in spirituality and with people. And now I'm like, oh my God, I can do that in all areas of life. It doesn't have to be just with relationships or, you know, when people come with their things that they want to get rid of. It can also be with the integrity that you can have in your business, how you can run your business. And I will definitely remember your words, you know, if you're not miserly and you give, the more you'll receive. And yeah, so Marie, I want to thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. I'm very, very grateful for the words that you've shared with us, your experiences, and I really hope it's really helped me already. Like every time I talk to you anyway, it's like that, but just having this whole, because I've never really had this, you know, background information from you. And now that I have that, I'm even more in awe of like what you're doing, what you continue to do. And not just that, you know, like because you've already sold some part of your business, like, and you can say like, oh, I'm out of it now, but you continue to be this like a light for people. And you continue to recognize that in people when you see something, oh, you can connect with this one or with this one. And you continue to give, even though maybe personally you're not going to gain anything. It's so admirable to have people like you in the world where they just sharing their gifts and doing what they're good at without thinking that they're going to get a reward for it.
Yeah.
It's really very grateful.
Yes. Yes. That's what we're here for. Yeah. And I really appreciate it.
We're in the business. We're in the humanity business and I love it. I might even tag that here.
Do that.
You know, we're in the humanity business. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and wishing you all the success because, you know, there's still more to come. Let me tell you that. There's still more to come. Yes, there's still more to come. And yeah, maybe we will invite you in the future again to talk about something else.
Anytime.
You bet. Thank you, Marie. All right, everybody, that's the end of our first podcast for this year. 2024, opening up with this big topic of business done differently. It was such a pleasure to have Marie here, and I will talk to you all again the next time.
See you soon. Right. Everyone.